Have you ever wondered why your house didn't sell the first time around? You're not alone. A lot of people question this, and they question us when we come to visit with them.
So I went on the internet the other day and I was looking through MLS, and there were all these expired listings on MLS. And, you know, expired means that they didn't sell the first time. So why do you think that is?
Well, I think it comes down to pricing, to marketing. I think it also comes down to presentation. How does the house look? I think a lot of times there's a misconception that sellers have where they think we're going to price it a little bit higher, and then that way when people come in and negotiate, then we'll get down to our price that we want to be.
Right.
And I think that could be a big mistake. I mean, if you pull up houses on the river right now, there's, you know, years of inventory because people price them high thinking they're on the river. Well, people aren't buying on the river right now. Let me rephrase that. People aren't necessarily buying second homes or investment properties because of interest rates.
Because the interest rates are higher.
Yes. Yeah. I think we're going to see a change in that, but I think that's what, you know, causes houses to sit.
Well, and I do think that it's also depending on the market that we're in, and the market we're in right now is kind of moving toward that buyer's market. And with that happening now, then when we list too high and wait to see if we're going to get an offer, because I think what sellers say to us is, or I know what they say to us is, let's just list higher and see what happens.
Because it's more emotional.
Yeah, we'll get an offer.
It's more emotional than it's being business, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because this is where they live. This is their home.
Right.
So it's an emotional buy-in for them.
Right. They raise their kids or have their animals and all of those things.
And I think what they fail to remember, and as that's our job to remind them, is that buyers are going to come in. It's not emotional at that point. At that point, it's a business decision.
Right.
So there, you've got a conflict of interest. You've got emotions involved, and you got business involved. So the two don't necessarily always align.
Well, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that sellers make is that they think, oh, we'll get offers. We can list it higher. Anybody can make an offer. But what we have found is that buyers don't do that.
Right.
They don't make an offer, or they won't even go look at it because it's listed too high.
Right. And I think the other part is the presentation, which I mentioned before. You know, our job is to really be honest and forthcoming with sellers and let them know, hey, you might love a fluorescent green front door. It was what spoke to you at the time, and you loved that. And we do not want to offend you because it is a beautiful front door.
Right.
However, most buyers are not going to necessarily want to buy a house with a fluorescent green front door.
No, they're not.
Although it's just paint and it's an easy fix, they don't want to spend just say $300,000 and know that they have to go in immediately and paint a front door.
Right. Well, and I think like we talked about before, we live in that HGTV world where they've gone and they've looked at 3 houses and they just want to be able to move in and find something for that price. And you can't do that.
No.
You can't do that.
No.
And the same goes with presentation to me as far as the things that are in the house. You're really good at that. And so making sure that you go ahead and pack your stuff away. You're not taking it with you. I mean, you are taking it with you. Yes, you are taking it with you. You might not. Maybe you're taking it to Goodwill, something like that.
That's just you.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm not taking it with me. But, you know, you're taking it with you. And so go ahead and just pack it up and let's move it out of the house. And let's kind of, because when buyers come in, they want to see the house.
And the first thing we hear from a buyer when they walk in a house that had great photography, which by the way, we paid for, we pay a lot of money to have great photography because it's about presentation. We want that house to look beautiful. We want people to come in and look at it. But the first thing buyers will say is, this looks nothing like the pictures.
Yeah.
So it's not just about presentation. It's going to be, the biggest part is going to fall on the strategy. That's where pricing comes into play.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about when houses are vacant? Because we have a lot of vacant. Do you think that makes a difference on the sale of the property? Do you think that causes expired listings?
I think you and I have different opinions on that sometimes. I think a house that is vacant allows a buyer to go in and make it their own. Mm-hmm. It allows that buyer to essentially move into that property and say, okay, I can see my couch here. I can see my children's room here. I can, whatever it should be, right? They can put themselves in that house. I think sometimes you see that a little bit differently.
Well, I I think that sometimes a vacant house, like especially when you go into a house that has odd rooms, that it's very difficult for a buyer to be able to see. And Jennifer can see that, but Kim can't always see it. So where is the couch going to go? Where the chair is going to go? And so I think that sometimes the virtual staging that we do comes in handy.
Yeah, I agree.
And so,
Absolutely.
we do that with the regular picture and then the virtual staging. And that way it gives a buyer an idea what that's going to look like in the house.
I will tell you, one of the first times, Kim and I have known each other for quite a while through different things, through church. We knew each other through church, we knew each other through CrossFit, then we knew each other through real estate. And she actually listed one of our houses for sale. Unfortunately, we have a problem with buying and selling houses. But she listed one of our houses, and it was an odd house. Everybody called it the Alamo house. People might know what I'm talking about when I mention that. And when you walked in the front door, it was this huge, great room. And it was the living room, dining room, game room was 2,200 square feet.
Yeah.
So me trying to design and decorate was not easy because you didn't want it to feel like this huge room. And I remember when Kim came over to do the listing presentation, she walks in and she's like, looks around, she says, Jennifer, are you guys going to leave the furniture? Like that was one of your concerns.
Yes, it was.
Otherwise, just like when I married my husband, it was his house. So it did look like a bachelor pad. But when I married him, I was like, how do you make this feel warm and feel like a home?
Because that house to me would have been really difficult to be able to see, because when people come into a space and there's not defined rooms, if there's just a really large living space, then they're like, well, what do I put there?
Right.
And I have that in my house because I have this weird location of a fireplace, and I married my husband, of course, and this thing took up a whole wall. Well, what do I put there?
Right.
It doesn't even, there's not enough room to put the TV up because they put the door in a weird place. And if I had designed it, I would have done something different, but I did not.
You just redesigned it.
Yeah, I just redesigned it. Yep.
So again, it just comes down to the presentation of it all to make sure that it helps to help a buyer envision themselves living in that.
Well, and smells make a big difference on presentation.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
If you have animals, if you've smoked in the home, things that maybe you just maybe you cook a lot with different spices, and so you want to make sure that those smells are gone because those people that are walking into a house can smell that.
And what did we say? How much time do we have when a buyer?
7 seconds.
Yeah.
You have about 7 to 8 seconds from the time that they pretty much walk up to the front door. And that's also something too, is to make sure that all the outside of the home is cleaned up. And so I think there's lots of reasons, and presentation is one of them for those expired listings.
So what are the things that we can, let me rephrase that. What are things we cannot change about a house?
The location. You can change the condition, but you can't change the location for sure. And the actual floor plan usually of the house you're not going to change. And so I think those are a couple of the largest things.
So when we have a buyer that comes in and does meets with us, and they say they want to live in a certain area, and then they start sending us houses in another area.
Right.
What is something you tell them or remind them of?
I remind them of where they want to live. Where do you want to live? And so maybe your home is not in the best location. Maybe it's on a busy street, or mainly it could be maybe in the middle of town. There's lots of different places that people don't want to live necessarily. Or maybe, we have one listed right now that's in a 55 plus community. We know that is a limited set of buyers that are going to come in.
Very specific.
Very specific.
Yeah.
Very specific.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So if your home didn't sell the first time, it doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't even mean that your real estate agent failed. It just means that something wasn't lined up correctly. And it could have even been something that you couldn't even control, or anybody can control. We've had houses that we think we're never going to sell these houses. We're like, oh my gosh, how's this going to happen? And then they are the first to go.
They sell.
And they sell very quickly. And then we have some that are like, oh, this is going to be on the market for, we're going to be lucky to get these pictures posted before it goes under contract. So you never can tell. Unfortunately, our crystal ball gets a little foggy.
Well, and so one of the main things is how's that house being marketed? Because when we put a house on the market, we need to make sure that we have really good photography, because think about it. Buyers now are looking on the internet. That's really where they're looking. Used to, they drove around, they drove through neighborhoods. I know we've done that 1,000 times, but the photography and video is one of the main things, because as they're scrolling past those pictures online, then they need to be able, we want them to stop. We want them to stop and look at that house, and they're not going to do that. And they're not going to do it if it's overpriced. And they're not going to do it if they see a picture with tons of stuff in the house that they can't actually see the room. So we want them to stop on that,
Right.
on that MLS listing as they're scrolling.
So if you're thinking of relisting, give us a call. We would love to sit down and talk to you, go over our marketing strategy, go over our marketing plan all together, and see if it's something we can do and work together.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.